Hello, my name is Roshan Narayan, and thank you for joining us on In20. If you're watching us on YouTube, do
that back foot and protect and pass the ball. Very, very simple. Brilliant. If you put leg.
On behalf of Danny and myself, welcome to the show. Danny Mills has played for Leeds, Middlesbrough, a couple other clubs, as well as for England at a World Cup. So why is it, Danny, in 2021, when we're looking forward to the Euros, we're already talking about Qatar and not in the best way possible? Yet again, there was some negative talk when they won the right to host the World Cup. And now you have the likes of Norway, Netherlands, Germany, all wearing these shirts, screaming out for humanity, screaming out for human rights. So if you could enlighten us, Danny, what is going on from your neck of the woods? In Europe.
Well, I think you have to go back to the beginning and look at why the World Cup was won in Qatar. You know, FIFA was, we hope, a completely different organisation back then. And obviously lots of speculation as to why Qatar even won the World Cup in the first place. You know, you then move on, 10 years, whatever it might be. And there's been lots of issues around working conditions, the way the stadiums are being built in Qatar, and the way that they use, labour at times. The problem we now have is people are now only starting to make waves and to have these protests, and we're 18 months away. It's a little bit late for that, I think. Nobody really complained at the time about the conditions of how the stadium's been. But there's been one or two issues along the way, but now it's only really coming to the forefront in the media, and it's great. And of course, everybody deserves a basic human right to certain working conditions and living conditions and everything else. And of course, we want that on a global scale. But now, obviously, the players are getting involved. And, there's talk of boycotting the World Cup. That's not going to happen. There is no way a team is going to pull out, from a financial perspective. And also, let's be honest, if it was England and suddenly now the government said, right, you cannot go to the World Cup, who are you punishing? You're not punishing Qatar, you're punishing those players. Those players have been working for this since they were maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. This may be their one chance, the pinnacle. It's like stopping a person going to the Olympics. And on that, nobody complained about the World Championships athletics happening in Doha. What was it, a year or so ago? There was no same stadium that's going to be used. No issues around that. I just think I worry again that it's going to be all these protests, all these T-shirts, and nothing will really happen. It'll come to the forefront of people's minds for a short space of time.
Yep.
The World Cup will go ahead. It'll all happen, and then we move on. Just like in Brazil, there was issues about what was going to happen to the stadiums. Do we know? Do we know? No one knows. There was issues around Russia, what that was going to be like. Great tournament. We've all forgotten about it. Qatar, the issues leading up to it. Put on a great tournament, and we forget about it. That's my problem with all this, that actually nothing ever really seems to get done.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I'm glad you brought up Brazil. That's when I first met you. There were stories about what happened there during the construction. Nobody will exactly know, like you mentioned, what truly happened behind the scenes. But just to be, I don't use the words devil's advocate, but just to be on the side of the Qataris, you look at them and you go like, wow, they finally got an opportunity in the Middle East to handle the biggest thing apart from the Olympics. Well done to them. Do they have the infrastructure? Things of that nature should have been asked by FIFA all those years ago. But you've got to look at them and go like, if you're them, like, why does everybody hate this? Is it more political than, it is sports?
Oh, yeah, of course it is. I think obviously it's not, there's two ways to look at it. It's not a footballing nation. Per se, it's not one of the big traditional footballing nations or continents. FIFA would argue that to take the global game to a global level, you have to introduce it to new communities,
which is a fair point.
Yeah, of course. So next on the list really should be India, or that somewhere in that part of the world. If you're going to go down that route, So I understand that argument, but Qatar have got money, and they've suggested they're going to put on. How they won the bid is still open to speculation. There's obviously been a lot of issues around that since, and lots of people have had to resign from FIFA or been sacked, and investigations and everything else. So we know there was issues around the bid process and how they won that originally. But I've worked in the Middle East a long time ago, back on it. So probably 15 years ago, before the World Cup bid. And I've seen what working conditions are like out there. We all know about, the differences in what you can and can't do compared to the Western world, because of, let's be honest, football fans a lot of football fans, not everyone, would like to have a drink. There'll be parties in the streets and all that. That doesn't happen, in Qatar and a lot of the Middle East states. So those laws maybe will have to be relaxed or found a way around in some way, shape or form. I've seen the working conditions before in the Middle East where, it's basically hotbedding. Somebody works for 12 hours, they get out of the bed, so, another shift worker comes in and gets into that bed. Two people share one bed, 12-hour shifts. It's always gone on. So why only now, 18 months to go, are people suddenly going, hang on a minute, this is not right? They've had 10 years to talk about this, to deal with this.
Very true.
It's a little bit too late to suddenly go, oh, actually, we're going to boycott what's going on. Maybe you should have done this 10 years ago and stopped the bid process from happening, or complained about it in its infancy, when it first happened. But nobody was overly concerned now. Suddenly it's like, oh, Germany complaining about it, so Holland, we better complain about it. Oh, actually, England, we better complain about it, and Spain, and we better say something, because if not, we look bad. But who's actually going to do something? I don't believe anyone's going to boycott the World Cup. I don't believe anybody's going to pull their team out. I just don't see that happening.
Thank you for rounding off that really well, Danny. So let's move on to one of the teams that had the shirt on, was Netherlands. And let's be honest, when Frank de Boer was brought in to lead this team as their manager, you asked yourself this question, why? Let's have a quick look at his stats prior to last night's game. And this is a bit shocking. Inter Milan, Palace, we all know what happened in Palace, Atlanta United. Does this scream out, hire me right now, I am the greatest manager on the planet?
No, but would you say that about Gareth Southgate? International management is very, very different to club management. It's not so much about, you can't improve the players in the short space of time that you have with them. It's more about managing the team, managing egos, managing personalities, and put them together and getting the best. Now, I look at the two teams that Frank de Boer's put out recently, and let's be honest, they're weak teams. They are not. But it's not.
They're missing a few pieces, fair enough, and Van Dijk is injured.
But this is not the Holland of old, And you go back to when they made it to the World Cup semi-final, World Cup finals. That team is nowhere near the same. The quality in that team compared to other nations is not fantastic. The quality compared to what they used to have in the Dutch system is not that good. A lot of those players are not playing regular first-team football at the moment. So if they can't play for Serie A, Premier League, Bundesliga teams, then why are you suddenly expecting them to be great at an international level? Maybe it's just this cyclical thing at the moment where the Dutch are having a little bit of their downtime in terms of international talent.
That's downtime. The last two tournaments, were they there? No, not really. It's more than a downtime. It's a complete shutdown, Danny. Literally.
Yeah, but it has to be. It goes in waves, doesn't it? From where they were, fantastic. You think of Van Persie and Schneider and all these great players, that they had at the time. And you go back to sort of the 80s, and it takes. Look, what Germany took them 12 years to regrow it. Took Spain a long time to regrow. All the youthful talent that's coming through. And even England at the moment, a lot of potential. But it's only potential at the moment, and we might not see the best of them. They got lucky in the last World Cup, getting to a semi-final. But they did. The teams that you had to play, they were fortunate. So, Holland, the Dutch team, Holland, Netherlands will get there.
So, would I be justified to say this, that Frank de Boer right now in terms of what he can do is just perfect for this team because that's the best they have right now. And you've got a manager who can try and do as much as he can with this set of players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if Pep Guardiola goes in and manages, is he going to make that team that much better? Not really. You know, it's down to the players. You know, you can make players better, but how much better can you make them on an international level? 10% maybe? That's not a huge difference to go from where they are. You know, 10% difference is not that great. You know, it's very, very difficult to improve the team in a short space of time when you only have them for maybe 3 weeks a year in total. There's not much more you can do.
Okay. What else can Ronaldo do to bring about the complete destruction of VAR when it comes to football? I mean, it's International Week. We shouldn't be talking about this. It's a World Cup qualifier and there was no VAR.
Well, again, I get it. Maybe some countries don't have VAR and the systems in place.
Understandable.
Yes,
but it's a World Cup qualifier.
Yeah, but also they should have goal line technology. Come on, everybody should have goal line technology. Goal line technology has been around for how long? Ask Frank Lampard. You know, we all know about that. That almost hit the back of the net and came back out again.
True.
You know, I mean, I've seen Ronaldo several times, and it appears to go over the line. You know, it's not an easy one because obviously you've got the post, it all happens very, very quickly. It's not easy for the official, and that's why goal line technology was brought in. Again, it's.
Is it excusable in 2021 from FIFA's point of view?
I don't think it is, and I'm not sure what the argument would be for them. Surely the prerequisite of playing in a World Cup qualifier is you have to have a stadium capable of at least having goal line technology. If VAR's not there, okay, sort of maybe understand that because it's still relatively new, you know, in the world with everything's going on. Some of those smaller countries, some of the smaller nations might not be able to afford it, you know, and we're talking, you know, because there's, I forget, Australasia, Oceania, Asia, whatever it is now. There's some of those countries that might not have VAR, you know, so it's either all or nothing. So I get that, but goal line technology, that's not that difficult to put in place. That's not that hard, you know, and everybody, that should be the bare minimum, especially after what we saw in South Africa, you know, obviously at the World Cup when Frank Lampard scored a goal against Germany that was, you know, 15 yards over the line and wasn't given.
Is this a way of FIFA or UEFA just like pumping in money to these smaller countries, these smaller stadiums and say, listen, here's a bit of money for you to host this. You're going to get something there in return and you keep that economy and that system going? Could you?
I mean, goal line technology can't cost that much. It can't be that expensive, you know, and if you say to those smaller nations, right, okay, let's say, you know, it was the Faroe Islands, you know, whatever it was, playing a World Cup qualifier. Very, very small. But like, if you want to be in the World Cup, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to pay. And if FIFA have to subsidise that, they have to subsidise it. End of. You know, as simple as that. It shouldn't be that hard in this day and age for an international team. You know, you have to pass a lot of checks and jump through a lot of hoops to play international football. Goal line technology should be the minimum, I would say.
Would you blame Cristiano for him walking off and throwing the badge, you know, and things of that nature?
But he walked off after the game, didn't he? He didn't walk off. He didn't. You know, he stormed off the pitch and threw his armband on the floor. Woo! Wow. You know, so what? You know, we all get upset and whatever. He was clearly, I don't know, just frustrated, whatever it was. If he'd have walked off before the game had finished, that might have been a different story. But he didn't. Equally, the follow-up shot should have gone in as well. They should have scored that. You know, so sometimes you have to take responsibility and say, well, look, you know, you had a chance to beat a player on the line that can't use his hands. It wasn't the goalkeeper. Shoot in the back of the net, and then no one cares.
Fair enough. You just saw a picture of Cristiano and Cassano. We will not talk about this quickly because it's not the latest news, but I just find it quite funny that Cassano has come out and attacked Cristiano because we're talking about him, the fact that he's been an absolute failure at Juventus in terms of him not delivering. It's a very easy thing to always pick on Cristiano, right? That's a given, correct?
He's also scored quite a few goals.
Yeah, I know.
For Juve. But yeah, I think, you know, when you're the very, very best, it's like Messi, isn't it? Everyone's like, oh, Messi's gone, legs have gone, not doing what he did. Barcelona are rubbish. It's all Messi's fault.
Yeah.
Juve haven't played well. It's all Cristiano Ronaldo's fault. Well, not necessarily. And these
Very
players,
low?
well, I think it took over very, very difficult circumstances.
But why give it to him? He didn't have any experience.
Well, again, nor did Frank Lampard. You know, it's the modern sort of trend, isn't it? Steven Gerrard had no experience in his second season.
But with all due respect to Rangers, I mean, there's Rangers and then there's Juventus, right?
Yeah, but there's only 2 teams in that league. You know, but Celtic had won it for 9 years in a row, or 8 years in a row when he took over. 9 years in his first season, they got beaten, and then he turns it around and they win. So, you know, that's to do that was an incredible achievement. You know, to stop them win when their financial power is so much bigger, just like Juve's is. Again, there's obviously this trend to give it to young, up-and-coming managers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
But if you've seen them play this year, you would know that at times when he had to make a choice in terms of switching the system or players, I know it's easy to criticize when you're sitting in comfort.
That's experience, Roche. You know, that's if you don't have the experience,
you
know, you don't always make the right decisions, and it's whether the owners are prepared to allow these managers, coaches, to make mistakes on the job. You know, normally you make your mistakes at a lower level. You learn your craft, you know, going through. You know, even yourself, you don't suddenly, you know, you don't go from nowhere to being on national television as a presenter. Yep. You know, you go through online, you go through local sort of TV, and you hone your skills. You make your mistakes that no one really sees. And
but now you have TikTok, so it's a different ballgame.
Well, that's true. But suddenly, you know, you're having to make the hardest decisions when you have no experience. You've never made these decisions before. So it's not easy, but I think it seems like Pirlo will be there for at least next season.
Okay, final question. We've got roughly about 2 minutes. Gareth Southgate for England, you've spoken about him before. He was given the opportunity. He has turned that team around. But will this team evolve under him by the time you hit the Euros and, more importantly, the World Cup?
It all depends on who's available and who's in form. You know, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, England, such a talented team." At the moment, incredibly talented going forward, but a lot of potential. And Gareth said this week that potential is a very, very dangerous thing because everyone goes, you know, we've had it before, you know, with the golden generation when Rooney was coming through. Before that was Michael Owen and all these great players, and they don't deliver because at the moment they're very, very young and potential goes up and down. You know, the quality varies. England's defence 6 months ago was all over the shop. And then suddenly we had 15 right-backs, outstanding. And now it's like, well, Trent Alexander's off form. You know, Trippier's out in Madrid. We don't see him that often in this country. You know, and we're starting to run out of left-back. Who do we play at left-back? Luckily, John Stones has come into form. Midfield, everybody's now injured. You know, there's no real midfield. Declan Rice is the only sort of consistent performer in the Premier League that's fit at the moment. So all of a sudden, international football is often who is available in those tournaments and who is in good form. You know, even Raheem Sterling, who was sensational, you know, sort of 8 months ago, has just dropped off a little bit. He may well come back again. But this is why international football is very, very difficult, because even when you have great players, they're not all in great form at the same time.
And I think something more difficult for people, especially who watch the Premier League, in love with England because of the coverage of the Premier League over here in Asia. Do you think it's the media that has the biggest influence in telling us, or the viewers, how good this team is rather than what they can really do in terms of potential, as you mentioned?
England are favourites going into the Euros. What? How can you be better than Belgium? How can you be better than France? Portugal as well. It's like, you know, so left back, Shaw or Chilwell? Okay, bit of a toss-up between the two. Maguire and Stones probably going to play. Right back is still up in the air. Declan Rice holding midfield. With who? I don't know. Up front, Kane. And then we're not sure. There's a host of number 10s that could possibly play. So, you know, and these aren't all serial Premier League winners, Champions League winners. So it's, again, the media rules the world. We know that. You know, people believe what they are told. People get sucked into the hype and everything else. England favourites for the Euros? No chance.
Wow. Thank you for that, Danny. And God bless you. As long as they allow you to stay in that country, we will always be friends.
Well, they might win it, but there's no way they should be favourites. And I know we're going over time, but that's also skewed by their favourites because it's a home nation, that people think, oh, they'll do well because they're playing at home. In this current climate with COVID and everything else and the pandemic, we've just got no idea what's going to happen.
All right, Danny, thank you very much. It's overtime, but it's okay. Nobody makes the rules anymore. It's the internet. It's just different these days. I'll see you next week. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, thank you very much. And catch all the highlights on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Till the next time, take care.